60 inch?
That is a 60.
Yeah. Almost a 60 in my living room.
That was kind of like inherited. Not really inherited, but...
You get them at Best Buy now for like $600.
I know, they're so cheap. Testing, testing. Check, check, check. All right. Testing, testing. Check, check. Hello, hello. All right, that's good. That's good.
Hello. Oh yeah, so you usually keep this down low, huh?
Yeah, keep it down. It's not in the... Kind of pull it towards you.
Oh yeah, so you usually keep this down low, huh?
Yeah, keep it down. It's not in the... Cool, cool. New setup today. All right. How are your headphones?
Good. They're good.
You're in this one.
Which one am I?
This one right here on the right.
Okay, cool.
Hello, hello.
Get it too loud here.
Levels are good.
So, what were we just talking about? The fuck
Camouflage.
No, it was, I thought
getting kicked out of the club.
Yeah, getting failing at the game. Like there are people who try to drink normally and just can't do it. You know, there was a guy in the class last night who said, "Well, discipline is the problem." He maintained that he had such good discipline that he could, he knew the answer to all this shit. And I pointed out to him that you're making that statement in a DUI class, that you have a DUI. So he said, yeah, the only reason I have is because I let my discipline slip. So his idea of it was that if you could learn to be disciplined, that it would cure all the problems with drug addiction and alcoholism. And what I was telling you earlier, I remember now, it was that it always lies about itself. All addiction lies about itself as it begins to develop. That's the nature of it. And so by the time you are really fully addicted before you know it, you're looking at it and you don't see it until it's, you're already in the addiction itself. So, there are, I think, different reasons why people get addicted. Sometimes it's, genetic and physiological. Sometimes it's maybe more psychological. I don't pretend to know the answers to that stuff. But I know what doesn't help, and that is passing judgment on somebody, saying, you're just a fuck up. That's why you're addicted. And that ain't going to work.
That's an argument I see all the time online. It's like, oh, help them. I have this disease. It's like no heroin came out of the bush and shot you in the arm.
That's right.
Or no alcohol bottle, whatever. But, I mean, there's a lot of people who say, like, oh, fuck the addicts. They're addicts. They started it. They went down the spiral themselves.
Right.
And then I look at those people like, okay, you've clearly never been to jail. You've never been with these people. You've never talked to an addict of any sort, whether it be drugs or alcohol. And then a lot of times, those are the people that I see out binge drinking and doing blow 4 nights a week.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm like, wait, well, you're an addict. You're just...
Well,
because
that's the thing with DUI, is that people get stigmatized for DUI by the people who do it themselves.
Right.
But they haven't been caught. So, there's the people who say, well, I have a disease. That's why I'm an asshole. Don't get that pass. The idea of a disease concept to me, what it does is take some of the shame out of it. And it lets me know that I have a body and a mind that doesn't allow me to get away with that, to play that game. It's not because I get a pass. I can't say, well, I'm sorry I stole money from you because I have a disease. Right. That's the abuse of the idea, I think. and the misuse of the idea. The idea of the disease concept is to take the shame out of it so that the person can get help and understand, just like a diabetic would get help. You don't pass judgment on a diabetic, And so then on the other end of the spectrum is where people say, well, it's purely weakness and lack of discipline. They're missing the point too. So it's, the answers, seems to me, it lies in the middle. And what I think is kind of interesting to me is that the conversation that we can have about it with each other has to be organic and genuine. It can't be, educated guy with letters behind his name talking down to you, condescending to you to help you get your shit together.
Right.
And that's the classroom that I get to be a part of and have for a long time. Is the dynamic is that I hope, anyway, that I don't come off as one of those guys that's been to school to learn to talk about this shit. And I know I haven't been to school, so I got that part of it down.
Yeah, no, you come off like this class is being instructed by someone who's been in this chair before.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is.
And I think the real value in it is that I'm a drummer by trade, by nature. That's how I see the world, right? And so my passion is playing drums. But I've also, over the years, developed a passion for teaching the DUI class. But neither one of those things are going to pay my mortgage.
Right.
So I do mortgage work in order to pay my bills. It gets paid. I was just having this conversation this morning with my niece that my life isn't filled up the way, if I just did mortgage work and made a lot of money doing that, I would be miserable and unfulfilled. I am sure of it. And that's why it's the kind of job, real estate's the kind of job that makes you want to just, tear your hair out.
Yeah. Especially here, probably, I'm sure.
You just want to, tell these motherfuckers that, shut up, you're lying.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Real estate's all about lying.
Like the homeowners or the people looking to buy, or
everybody.
What do you think? Everybody's lying.
Everybody. The homeowners lie about how much the property is worth.
Okay.
The buyers lie about how much they're willing to spend. It's just everybody's lying.
Yeah.
You never see anybody go, okay, here, take this. Fair enough.
Yeah. Are they overstating like with their budget and everything like that?
Yeah. They have all kind of slogans like buyers are liars and that shit.
Wow.
So are sellers.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's okay. That's the world. You recognize that. But the payoff for me is that I get to participate kind of on my terms in that world. But I'm lucky enough to have people around me that allow me to play it from the edges of it. And I don't get caught up in it. That way I can pay my rent and still do the things I love to do, which is playing drums and teaching DUI classes.
100%.
And so the real passion in life a lot of times doesn't pay your bills. If I just played drums for a living, I'd be living, I would not have the income for sure. I'd have to, strip down my life considerably. And I'm 70 years old, so Britney Spears probably isn't going to call me up for a tour.
Yeah. But there's other ways to make. I'm reading this new book now called The Side Hustle: From Idea to Income in 27 Days. And it came across on my Kindle, but he was talking about a woman who was doing caricatures at Disney. And then she's like, hey, I'm getting paid like $12 an hour. And then she started doing her own stuff freelance. Now she gets paid $2.50 an hour to bring out her iPad and do it live and like these big corporate events and whatnot. And I think there's ways to make, like even as DJing, for me, DJing is hot right now. It's too hot. But like even to do some sort of like instruction or like an online, I wanted to do an online DJ school for a while. So there are ways that you could, drum more and get paid more. But it's definitely, for me, when it was about anything other than making music or DJing or performing, it became too much like work. And like when your hobby or your passion project becomes like work, you kind of start hating your hobby too. Right. I'm definitely the type of person who wants like multiple things going on. So it's like, okay, I don't like this job as much as I like this job, but this one pays the bills and everything else. I think a lot of times people too are kind of going after, even with addiction or problems in their lives. Like I see people that are saying, "Oh, well, I'm an addict, so this is my problem. I figured it out. It's all my life is. I know, and then I know now." But it's like, no, there's a lot of underlying stuff that goes in with that. It's like, well, why are you an addict? Is it? I mean, not why are you an addict, but what made you an addict? What are you trying to suppress? Is there some things in your mind, like things that happened to you? You know what I mean? So it's like, there's not like like you always say, there's not like an answer, and just because you're in this class doesn't mean that you're an addict or but a DUI, the chances of, if you are an addict and an alcohol abuser, the chance of you being in this class, I mean, you're going to evenally end up here.
If you're lucky. It. Yeah.
If you are lucky.
A lot
right.
don't. But I think, the people who do recognize their addiction need help to recognize the solution. And by recognizing, going back further into your stuff, finding out what you used to think, or how you used to think, what happened to you in your life, the journey that you had been along, that we get a grip on the answers, the solutions to those things. And for me, the grip was to drink and use and control it all. So a part of my experience was to unlearn the things I thought I knew. So it's really important to go back into your life and understand what makes you tick. But at the same time, the solution starts out with not taking that drink today. But at the same time, understanding more about the underlying problems and solutions that have always been there for me, but I just couldn't access them because I had such a tight grip on my status quo, my way of doing it. Same thing happens with DUI. People come in with DUIs, think that it's an event that they regret, that's been a terrible thing for them to go through. These are the lucky ones that haven't gotten in an accident or killed somebody.
Right.
But
the free ones. But
they're very slow to let go of what they think about their ability to control the choice to drink and drive. So what I try to do is to at least invite people to kind of let go of what their old thinking and replace it with new thinking, which is kind of what recovery is too. And I don't want to have a podcast about recovery. I don't want to have another one of those recovery podcasts, because that makes me want to fucking shoot myself. But
are there a bunch of those out there? I'm sure.
Yeah, there has been over the years. Yeah. There's always some fucking guru that's got.
I hate the gurus,
sober,
the experts.
It's gonna, and I'm definitely not one of those guys. But it it would be an oversight not to talk about being sober. I came up, in music. Well, as soon as I was out of high school, or even in high school, I had a band. I played in a band. I would play in my senior year of high school. I was playing 6 nights a week.
Oh, wow.
So other kids were going to the fucking proms. I'm going to some joint.
Hell yeah.
The south side of town. And
you were making money then too?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh, I remember I had like $110 a week I made. And the other fucking kids at high school, had allowances. But, so I would go, get coffee and get lunch on my own. I was self-sufficient.
Right.
By the time I was 17. And I mean, my mom was always in my life. My stepdad, they were loving parents and a family. We're kind of middle-class family. But I had departed all of that when I could play drums. I learned how to play drums kind of early on. It's about 10, 11, 12 years old. And my first gig was in 1961.
Damn.
And I was 12. I was 13. And it was a recital with my drum teacher, or my music teacher. And I played trumpet and drums. I even tried playing them at the same time for a while.
Yeah, I can see.
Didn't work well, because you can't smile at the chicks when you got a trumpet in your mouth.
No.
So toss that aside.
I want to. And the drummer who's got a mouth, he's picking up the chicks.
Right.
Like, you got to
be able to smile, wink,
or something.
So for me, I grew up in a trailer park partly. Came out of New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey, and we lived in a beautiful area. And when my dad died when I was young in a car accident, my mom remarried, and we came out to Phoenix, Arizona, and we didn't have any money. so we left the structure of the family and the security of all that in Jersey, and came out west, and lived in a trailer, and we, for a number of years, lived in a pretty, it was a pretty rough existence. It wasn't a tough existence. That's mischaracterizing it, but we didn't have any money. But you know, my experience living in a trailer park was beautiful. I loved it. I loved my friends. I loved that hang time. We lived in Florida, Tampa, Florida, in trailer park.
Oh, nice.
We lived in Phoenix, Arizona. We lived in Denver, Colorado. In those days, I didn't have any class distinction about living in a trailer at all.
Yeah.
We had a nice brand new trailer.
Now it's fucking hipster.
Yeah, that's hipster again.
You know what I
For a
mean?
while, it was like, you know.
Yeah, you would see, the trailer park or trailer trash
Yeah,
or whatever the fuck
bullshit.
that is. Yeah.
It's still perpetuated by guys like Lindsey Graham,
Yeah.
who's made the mention of dragging a $100 bill through a trailer park and gathering. He was responding to the Kavanaugh women thing.
Yeah.
It was a really horrible thing to say. But just to share with you about it, I lived in New Jersey. We lived in, like rural country New Jersey, like outside of Somerville, which is a small place. White House Station, New Jersey is where I lived. And if you look it up, it's just gorgeous. It's where Princeton is near there.
Okay.
Flemington, New Jersey. It's all, beautiful country. And we left there, and probably for reasons I'm not sure about, my mom remarried a guy, and we left, and he wasn't healthy. He was sick, so doctor said go to Arizona. So off we went, and lived in a trailer, and it was by looking back on it, it was a pretty financially strained lifestyle, but I had a ball. I loved it.
And there's three of you.
Was,
So stepdad, mom, and you.
and no, I had a sister and a brother too.
Oh, wow. So five of you.
5 of us. And when my little brother was born, we lived in an 8-foot wide trailer, 40 feet long, 8 feet wide. And I still had a fucking ball.
I bet.
I mean, man, if you don't know that if somebody doesn't poison your mind about this shit, you just adjust.
100%.
You just go with the flow. We lived on the bay, on Tampa Bay. I used to walk out from the dock where we lived. The trailer park was butted right up to the bay. And it was a finger of the bay where you could walk out when the tide was low and the sandbars.
Yeah.
I could walk out to the middle of the fucking bay and stand up to my shins in water.
And see your home, or at least your
See my
neighbor.
home.
Yeah.
And, find a dead sand shark or something. And it was just an adventure that I loved.
For sure.
And then we moved around, and we ended up back in Phoenix, Arizona, and then we lived a trailer there too. But again, nobody told me, nobody poisoned my mind about a class. We had a lot of Mexican American kids in the classroom in Phoenix, and I didn't have a distinction about, well, those guys were different than me. Those were just the guys.
Yeah.
And there was a gay guy in my class in grade school. And I loved the guy, but he was clearly more woman than he was a boy, but very feminine.
Okay.
And I remember we just accepted him. That was Charles, and he was a great guy.
Wasn't a big deal.
Was not a deal at all.
A deal, yeah.
It was just he was who he was, and it wasn't until later that people started to poison that well. And I'm sure Charles suffered a lot of shit that I didn't see. I'm sure of it, but to his credit, he was never angry or Anyway, so as I grew up, and eventually my second father died, and my mother remarried again, and he had a house, and we moved into his house, and by then I was 15, and I was I was kind of on my own in my mind anyway, but at the same time, the Beatles hit. So I was like 14, 15 years old. The Beatles came along. And I'd already had a little surf band, or I don't know what kind of band it was. We had a band. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. But I had drums, and I played, and the Beatles hit. And and that's when I knew what I wanted to do for my life. That was my identity. I became, I had the band expanded. We got new guys. We started growing our hair long. Got kicked out of high school because my hair was too long.
Hell yeah.
All kinds of shit. And once the game was on, once the Rebel game was on, I was in, man. I was in. Because the band was all older guys than me. Not a lot older, but just older.
Right.
They had cars. And my sister was older than me. She had a car. And it was just this identity that I look back on it, and it was beautiful. It was these bands that came along in that period of time. By now it was like the middle 60s, 64, 65. And I was good enough to start playing in nightclubs with a band. And so by the time I was 16, I was playing joints or playing in clubs or the like at an event at the state fair or something.
So these nightclubs back then in the 60s, they had bands playing just all night long?
All the time, yeah. Well, when we were young, the band I was in was too young, or at least I was too young for the regular hours, actually. So we played after hours.
Okay.
So after hours in Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, there was no booze.
Okay.
They took the booze, at least ostensibly, they took the booze off the counter.
Right.
And so we played till 4 a.m.
Wow.
And that's when during that period of time was when one of the guys had speed. He had a White Cross Benzedrine, a pill called White Cross Bennies. They were big. He had a big jar of them. He said, "Take one of these, for the gig, and after we're done, you'll still have plenty of energy. We'll go fishing." So my experience in the first introduction to speed or to drugs was speed fishing.
Speed fishing.
At 6 o'clock in the morning out in the fucking desert.
Oh my Lord.
Wired out of my tits.
That sounds just horrible. That sounds bad.
But nobody told me it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was just, that's what this is about.
Yeah. Speed fishing.
But I needless to say, I didn't fish much after that. It kind of ruined me for fishing.
Yeah.
But the reason for this long-winded tale is that all during this time, I felt that I had embraced an identity that I really connected to, because I was a kid that grew up without a father, really. My father died when I was 3, and my second father he wasn't helped well. He was a sick guy, and he wasn't really hands-on in my life. So I found my identity. And the older guys in the band, they were they felt kind of like father figures to me. And it was just game on. But also, along with all that was drugs and alcohol was game on too.
Yeah.
So nobody handed me a rule book. So I didn't know. And there was a guy named Corey Wells who I played with in the 60s. I was 19 years old when I was in his band. And we were together for maybe a year. And that band morphed into Three Dog Night. Okay. And Corey was one of the he passed away 2 years ago, but he was one of the instigators of the band. Him and Danny Hutton, and then Chuck Negrod came on. So I was in his band. They wanted me to stay with it. He was a real big brother / father figure to me. Corey was, but I didn't want to be around Corey because I knew how straight-laced he was. He was not a drinker. He didn't do drugs, and he was a disciplined guy. And I loved the guy, and I really respected him. But I wanted to be with guys that I could, that had more.
Yeah, get down with.
Yeah, more leeway, so to speak. And then they also wrote their own songs. So I went back to Phoenix and played with my buddies, my friends, and it was just game on with drugs and alcohol. And
what was big then? Like
everything.
Everything was big.
Acid. Did a lot of acid. And alcohol and pills. Some, not too much powdered speed, but pills. And then when I came to LA in '68, or in '68, I was in LA and I met cocaine. So then it was cocaine and booze and pills. It was never like it took one out and placed it with another. It was just added to the package.
Right.
You
It's
know?
like, what do you got? Oh, fucking
It's-
trail
yeah.
mix. Cool.
Yeah,
Whatever.
Exactly right. Right.
Yeah. That's the people find themselves in shitty situations and start mixing all these crazy.
Yeah. But like I said,
Uppers, downers.
there's no rule book.
No.
Nobody told me not to drink with a downer. And I'm not sure I would have paid much attention, but I got in a lot of trouble, blacking out, and a lot of, crazy shit happened that I survived, thank God. But not because of my choices.
Yeah.
Just by
You're lucky or whatever.
Pursued by grace.
Yeah.
That you're not going to die this time. And so, along with my new identity came the drugs and the alcohol that sort of tagged along in that environment. It was Jimi Hendrix, it was the Beatles, the Stones, all the stuff that we still, it holds up today. And, in Hollywood, California, in 1968, it was an active
Groovy.
place. It was very cool. And so as my addiction developed, it really kind of developed in the camouflage of all the cultural stuff. I didn't know anybody who wasn't doing all that stuff. I used to do cocaine, stay up all night, listen to, the new Beatle album, and, smoke weed every day.
Yeah.
It was no time when I don't remember anyway, saying no, I've had enough. It was just always
Keep going.
in play. So by the time I realized, it was a long time before I realized I had a problem with it, and so I take responsibility for all of it. But I would say that most of the shit came along pretty well disguised, even though, my friends would once in a while would say, "Did you have to get so fucked up last night?" I mean, we all got fucked up, but you got like invisible. And I never knew how to answer it. I said, "Well, sorry.
I was
just doing my thing, And so it's a funny thing how when I look back and try to identify some of the stuff that was in play, I think in my case, I was, looking for an identity and trying to establish myself in my mind anyway. Where did I fit in the world? And one of the places I fit in was, I was pretty shy basically, but once I had some drinks or some, a little blow or something like that, I could talk to anybody, could be friends with anybody, mix with.
Yeah, it really opens you up for sure, and even drinking, like the guys on the dance floor won't go out on the dance floor, won't talk to a girl, whatever.
Right.
And then they got a couple beers,
right.
We're like, oh yeah, let's do it. I think it's funny too. Actually, this is funny. We went to this after hours Cuban restaurant back after the gig, like we used to do. Get off the club gig at 3 a.m., go to Havana, get a Cuban sandwich, and then go play pool at this dive bar. And I'm doing all this dead sober. I was like,
sober?
Yeah.
Wow.
This is weird. So I'm in a pool hall. Yeah, I'm in a pool hall. Like we're sitting there playing some games, and I'm like, most people describe when they play pool like 2 beers. I'm really good at pool. By the 3rd, 4th beer, it's like I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm horrible again. But then with no beers, it's kind of like I'm nervous. I'm like really studying, making a shot. But that 1.5, 2 beer mark is where I'm like, whatever. It's just a game. But I'm kind of like riding that little buzz to like kind of get in my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's kind of how just life can be. For me, DJing, I wouldn't say that. I think I was trying to think about if there's like a 2 beer thing in DJing. When was I at my best DJing?
Your window.
Exactly. Where did I need to stay? Because there was times where I would get fucked up and get kicked out of the club by the bouncers, and I'm just like, fuck you. Or the like last song, and there's like 700 people on Wednesday night are like OOP, like cheering my DJ name, and I'm just like, yeah, fuck yeah, bro. Fuck, the cops are like, we're gonna arrest you, bro. Like this is a time ordinance. Like you're fucked,
Right.
Fuck the police, all that kind of shit. But I think that, when I get to the club, my whole like ritual of it was, all right, set up, do my little thing, say hi to the managers, hi to the bartenders, whatever, have a beer, talk to some friends, then go up there and then do my thing. But then this time not having that, it didn't feel different. The only thing that felt differently was looking out after like 2-3 hours in and seeing all these people fucked up.
Right.
And I'm just like, holy shit. Like normally I'd be making out with that chick, but right now that guy looks really creepy because she's just as fucked up as he is.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm looking at people just, or they're like yelling at their friends. Their eyes are just like, they're tired, man. They've been drinking in the sun. I did a day party on Monday. Well, you've been drinking in the sun for 4 hours, brunch on a Monday. And you just see in their faces they're fucked up. They're like getting in fights with their best friends over some stupid shit. I'm just like, all right, well, glad I'm not in that crowd anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that we talked a little bit before I asked you in class. I asked you like what your thoughts were on sex and alcohol, because I was actually listening to a podcast and this woman brought it up. You know, you ask any of my friends when was the last time they had sober sex, and they'll say like, "What? Like, never?
Yeah.
Like for the first time with someone anyway."
Right.
It's an uncomfortable thing. I've done it, and it was like, "Oh, this is kind," because she was, she didn't drink. Probably two girl that I definitely remember having sex sober with, because it was like an awkward thing. But then it was kind of like, I don't know. There was no shame the next day. It was like, hey, yeah, we had fun. Like it was what it was. You know, there wasn't any wake up to like, oh fuck, did I do something wrong? Was it like, I don't remember much of it. Did we have sex? Oh shit, did we use a condom? Whatever.
Yeah.
None of those thoughts existed.
Right.
So, I think that at least my and compared to guys like you, who've been sober for 20 years, right? I mean, I'm 6 months into this thing, and I'm going strong, and I'm not even looking at it like an everyday kind of thing. The biggest thing I was worried about was going back home and doing the DJ gig, something that I've always done, with a few drinks in me.
Right.
And then seeing my friends. So the only thing we really have in common is we like going out and talking. But you remove the alcohol, a lot of those friends kind of go away as well, which I'm not mad about. I'm like, oh wow, okay, I can see. Like, dude, I'm just not doing it. Oh, you're no fun sober. Well, bye.
Yeah.
We don't have to hang out.
Yeah.
You know.
Just took a character out of the relationship.
Right. And but it was good though to see like on the other side. I'm like, man, I wish I would have stopped drinking a while ago, because there's a lot of situations that I put myself in. It's finding the identity. You want to be, like I wanted to be a musician. I was in the club guy, but the promoter thing was this one way, and the promoters were all doing blow, and they're all the bottle girls and whatnot. And the DJs were, at the time, DJs were kind of like nerds to music. We all wanted like the new equipment and whatnot.
Right.
So it's kind of like going from the bedroom DJ out into there. You needed the enhancement of alcohol or weed or whatever. Weed gets me too paranoid. I don't touch that stuff. But yeah, I could see. I could see you when you say growing up in the trailer, right? You're like, I didn't see it as like a class thing. Right. It's like a cool thing. And that's kind of what's neat about, I remember growing up, I was in middle class family. We had a big house on the corner house, huge backyard. Like the Michael Phelps of the 80s, we bought a house from his family. So we had like a 3-lane swimming pool. All the parties we had were awesome. So other kids' perspective on it would be like, oh wow, this kid comes from somewhat money, not money, right, but like we're middle class, We're not in like some gated community and whatnot. But I used to think that the kids who were maybe a little less fortunate, or they had a bigger family so they couldn't live in the same neighborhood because there's like 12 kids to feed, not just 2 or 3. Going to their house, I mean, I think that the playtime we had and just like turning reality into like something else, like Neverland type style, you know what I mean? Like, but all the kids that I feel like had trouble. Not troubled upbringings, but just like a different upbringing than the traditional. Right. Those are the kids that kind of were more set up to succeed in life because they've started with this shit early. They weren't pampered too much, and the kids that were pampered too much are fucking popping pills.
They're
and
set up. Yeah.
They're like, oh well, fuck it. Yeah. So I think that if you get that shit out of the way early, it's kind of
the thing about it though is some people, once they get hooked up, they stay hooked up.
That's true.
To their 40s, deep 30s, 40s. I think 40 is a common age that you see guys get sober.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but it's common to see somebody, walk into the recovery in their 40s. I think that there's like a gestation period for your alcoholism. At least for me, I wasn't ready to stop in the 20s because I was convinced I could still make it work. I had a few, stepped on my dick a couple of times, but that's just, That's just a mistake.
Right.
And then the 30s is when you start to go, no, I can still control this, and maybe not so much. And then you start to, like, through your 30s, I think you start to come to terms with the fact that most addiction it develops by then.
Right.
And you come to, at least I did. I came to a place where I really understood that I wasn't going to get sober, but I couldn't keep drinking. So
yeah. And this, I see guys now, like, they're probably 37, 38, and they're like, I never really understood what a town drunk was, or like the local bar guy, you know what I mean? He's always in there. But now, as I'm getting older, I'm like, wow, you were that kid when you were 18, going to all the bars, life of the party. You're still continuing to live that life, and you're like well into your 30s now. Right. And at one point, I feel like probably, hopefully by the time he's 40, at least, if not sooner, he'll be like, wow, I'm the 39, 40-year-old guy that's still...
that doesn't happen. The majority of experience with that is the guy stays in it.
Stays in it.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, dude...
If you're sober, you're a minority of people who have come around. If you have, like... I think the numbers are like, 1 in 10 or maybe...
Are sober?
Yeah, maybe 2 in 10 tops.
Yeah. It's a funny thing. And I just went on a couple of dates with this girl I met on like an online app. My first one doing this. It was
really
fucking uncomfortable. She's a
with
vegan.
No drinks.
With no drink.
You need a fucking drink for that.
My first date with no drink. And she's like, oh.
That's admirable.
She's like,
hats off to Opie.
Yeah, I was trying. But she was like, yeah, this is my second or third time going on a date with someone. I'm like, this is my first. And she's like, oh, well, I'm going to have a glass of wine if you'd want to join in. I'm like, no, I'm not drinking. I'm like, and then I think the second or third date I told her why, about the DUI, and then she's like, oh, I did 8 years sober, and she's like, I stopped drinking when I moved out here from Kentucky, the same time I stopped like smoking weed and stopped eating animals, and she kind of just did it all at once. Like, or it was cigarettes, no eating animals. I'm like, oh, so you're a vegan, and she was big on. She was like, I couldn't get serious with a guy who wasn't vegan. So now I'm like, fuck.
Great. That's a short night.
Where's that drink?
Yeah. Give me the drink or the window. One of the two.
But it was cool because I've said this before. I feel like all those things where I would be like, oh my God, I'm uncomfortable. Let me grab a drink. Now I'm just learning to be just as open as I was, or just as stress-free as I was without the drink. I'm doing it now naturally. And I'm like, wow. And I'm identifying things more. I'm not slipping up and having too much one night and making an ass of myself. It's like, no, I'm here, and I can be accountable for everything that I say and do. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me. Is it like, it's like, oh, well, you were just drunk, or that shit happens. It's like, no, like I have zero excuse for this. Like why am I arguing with an ex-girlfriend or whatever it is? And just not suppressing all those feelings with alcohol. So when you stop drinking, they'll attack you on Monday or whenever it is that these benders or benders end.
Well, I think also with sex and alcohol, when I was younger, I had the balls of a brass monkey. I would hit on anybody. Yeah. And when you do it enough, the numbers game,
of course,
you get lucky. Even a blind squirrel would find some nuts once in a while.
This is true.
And I was always loaded. I mean, way loaded. And I thought I was just a wild man, like a sexy animal. Yeah. But the truth is, I was a drunk animal. That was, that I think women, for whatever reason, decided, well, I'll give this guy a shot. But, it rarely lasted more than a night or two.
Oh, for sure.
The thing I learned in sobriety is you're much more of a sexy animal sober than you were drunk.
Yeah.
There's a window. But my experience in sex, sober sex, is more intense, and when you can,
for sure,
fight through that uncomfortableness of it, you'll find that you can really be the animal you are.
I can feel so onto the sex thing. It's another thing that's kind of awkward. It's awkward to talk about, and there's things that happen when you're having sex that make you kind of laugh, and you're like, well, you're not supposed to laugh, this is like sexy time or whatever. But it's like, no, that was funny. A sound comes out or some shit happens, you're like, all right, we're back into it. But like, I feel like that's kind of the same unspoken area as in many ways is getting a DUI, or it's just an uncomfortable. Yeah. So when you bring them both together, but the sex thing too, I have had buddies. This guy was in love with this girl. He had one shot. he had to get drunk in order to like, or he thought he had to get drunk in order to hit on her. He does. Then he's doing blow to try to stay awake. And then like he finally gets a chance to sleep with this girl he's been talking about for 5 years. And he's got whiskey dick, coke dick. He's not getting hard.
Right.
He's like, what's going on? It's my
right.
chance, you know? So I'm like, yeah, wouldn't that moment have been 10 times better and it could have went somewhere? Now you just ruined your shot.
Call it whiskey dick, but really alcohol creates, it causes testicular atrophy.
Okay.
So alcohol causes a man to be less able to perform
Yeah.
hormonally.
Well, it makes sense.
But my story there is I was in love with a girl named Patty Evans, and she's listening. I hope she hears this.
We'll target her.
I can't find her. She's in. I think last time I heard she was in Reno or Tahoe, but she was gorgeous, and I was crazy about her. And what I didn't know was that she didn't drink. I didn't know she didn't drink because I never fucking paid attention. But I would, I was this, maniac with all the women I knew. But when it came to Patty Evans, I was a scared little boy. And so I was begging for my shot and I remember one time in a club, she would end up in a club and she wanted a sip of my drink, and I had a bourbon and Coke. And she took a swig of the Coke and spit it out. And I thought, well, you can't handle it, It didn't dawn on me that she doesn't drink. She spit the drink out. So I would be so nervous and uncomfortable around her that I would drink just to compensate for that. And so I had moved to Hollywood. And I mean, this went on for years.
Really?
She was my nemesis. I had to get to this woman. I had to, conquer this thing. It was just so fucking immature, so childish, right? Adolescent. She comes to, I had a house, I lived with my bandmates in a house in Hollywood in 68. And she comes and decides for whatever reason that she's going to come and sleep with me. And she came with another girl to hang out. And I know she's coming, and I get a bottle of Southern Comfort because I can't handle the straight.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. So she comes and I drink. I drank the perfect amount, and we had sex, and it was over in no time. And it was just a experience. It was just so fucking. And it wasn't because of her. She was still gorgeous. I was still crazy about her. But the best I could do is get numb enough to perform
and then do a shitty job.
And do a really shitty job. I kept it up, I guess, but I don't remember it.
Of course.
I can remember sex with certain women that's epic, that I can remember to this day. That, I can remember what I hollered,
Yeah, for sure.
But with Patty, who I wanted more than anything, it was just a non-event.
That's so funny.
And I so badly want to get a hold of her.
Yeah.
And say, give me another shot. She's also probably close to 70 at this point. This was in 1968. And I just want another shot. If you're not married, please, Patty, if you're out there, find me. Because I just want to make up for that,
We got to find, that's so
sober
funny.
sex.
Yeah.
Now, had I stayed sober, because she was sober, could I have performed?
When was the last time you heard or talked to Patty?
1969.
69.
69 or 70.
That would be incredible to get that conversation going.
Oh, God, in fact, I know some friends that I think might be able to track her down. I keep forgetting to do it, but I need to track her down.
For sure.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a funny conversation.
Yeah. I just want to say, I'm such a fuck up. I'm so sorry. And I really wanted to be the guy I wanted to be the guy was brave and commanding,
Right.
It's a little Freudian slip there, but commanding, not demanding. But,
You gotcha.
and I couldn't. She intimidated me. I was scared to death of her. I remember being with her one night, and I wouldn't make a move. And she was so pissed off. I took her home, and she was just pissed. I couldn't make a move. I was with my bandmates. We went to dinner. We sat around afterwards. And any other time, I said, here, let's scoot off into the bedroom somewhere. We had a big house that we were renting for the gig that we had. And I just sat there like a frozen child, like a scared little boy. And because if I didn't have the drink, talking about digging back in to see why you drank, what are the reasons underlying, I had invented myself sexually in such a way that if I had the right amount of drinks, I was, I could hit on anybody and get lucky and, consider myself a real stallion. But in my real true self, with somebody who I really wanted to be with, I was scared
You're just
to
scared
death.
as shit. Yeah. That's how one of my longest relationships, when we moved in together, probably my most serious relationship, it was, why aren't you trying to sleep with me? I'm like, I literally went on multiple dates. We slept in the same bed together, but I was not moving that hand. I was not making that move. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's like, why aren't you trying to have sex with me? I'm like, because I really like you. Like, I don't want this to, like, you know what I mean? Right. Like, I don't want the sex to fuck shit up. So it's always, if you look at my track record of people I've had sex with, for the majority, it's always the chick that was like scouting me out. And then the ones that were my really long-term relationships were the ones where I was like, no, I want to put forth the effort. I want to like text her a lot. I want to call her. I want to go on the dates. I want to do the right thing. The other ones are just like some chick will pick me up at a bar drunk. Oh, he's the DJ. I'll take him home tonight. And that shit happens. Like people, I'm not saying I'm a ladies' man or anything like that at all. But when you're in that mentality and you're on a stage and people are looking at you, and chicks are eye fucking the shit out of you, and you're like, okay, she wants to go home with me.
I know it well.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And it's like, but when those situations come around, like you're fucking, I can remember a lot of the times that I've had sex with the chicks that were like just batshit crazy, and like not just being batshit crazy to like take me home, but like in bed, just like fucking animals. I'm like, holy shit, you're crazy. Yeah, like you're crazy.
I was just playing, but you're crazy.
Right. Oh man. But yeah, some of the chicks I've slept with, but
one of the childish things is seen as a conquest.
Yeah. I can see that.
Notching your belt.
Right, but with the ones that I've really liked have always just been like awkward. I'm like, fuck, I need a drink to even attempt this. Right. But then once it went down the first time, I was like, all right, and then it was like a little less drunk the next time. Then it was like, all right, now we're having sober sex 3 times a day.
Then you're really in it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But that comfort it takes to get there, and I think that's why so many people have so many notches on their belts. I was reading Was I reading it? I think I was reading it. Some chick in LA was like, none of us have time to date in LA. We all have 3 or 4 things going on, between our main source of income, our side hustles that we want to become our main source of income. Right. There's no time, but we all still want to have sex. We all still want to feel desired and then desire someone else. So that when you get that in the mix, and then it's like a couple, some chicks are like, yeah, I hate my ex-boyfriend, but I mean, we still have sex because it's like, I'm not going to go online and find some random and risk some weirdo being on there. Yeah. I met this one chick too online. We never went on a date, but she was like a self-proclaimed witch on this dating app. She's like, oh yeah, I practice witchcraft. And I was like, that would be really fun. But I'm like, the sober me is like, fuck that. No, she's crazy.
Yeah. She's already told you who she is.
Right, exactly. I'm like, no. But if I had a couple of drinks, like, I brought her with this witch chick. You know what I mean? She's definitely good in bed, I'm sure. But, it's just the mix of alcohol in everyday, even like getting through the holidays, like, oh, deal with your in-laws. I remember Bex was running a commercial for a while, like, oh, the holiday in-laws coming to visit, we get through it with Bex and fucking eggnog or whatever it is. Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with, alcohol loosening up a social gathering, an otherwise stiff social gathering. I think that's fine. But I just think that for some of us, that's the only way that we learn how not to be stiff.
Right.
And that's when it comes to the problem. If I don't have it, then I'm just a fish out of water. I don't know who I am. And that's the identity thing that, that you forge, I guess, an agreement with alcohol as your identity. And it didn't take me long. When I got sober, I was playing in a club the week I got sober. So it didn't take me very long to adjust in that way, because I had support and people around me, and I was playing a joint in Hollywood, and played that first night. I remember, and I had a great time. I felt strong and good and all that. But what took a little bit longer was to realize, to learn how to just kind of socialize, just to be somewhere around people.
Right.
When you didn't want to be there. I was on a date with a girl that I was engaged to, and I a couple of times I just didn't want to be there anymore. We were at dinner, just being her. I just wanted to run out the door.
Huh.
And I didn't know what, and I didn't have a drink, and I couldn't run away, so I just sat there like a fish out of water. So that takes time to learn how to deal with the uncomfortable feelings that come up and stuff like that without running away from it. They say don't drink, don't use, and don't run from your feelings, which is sometimes not running from my feelings is the hardest thing.
Oh, 100, yeah.
But, so when it comes to the class and what this is all about for me is not about a scientific or even philosophical stand or point of view, but more of just an ongoing effort to just be open and, and try to connect with other people in a real way. In the classroom, I think what works for me is just to be me. Just try not to fall into some posture. And it seems like the same thing doing a podcast like this is that, I don't know what kind of, the temptation is to posture, to become some other thing. And I don't know why, like teaching the DUI class I never set out to do it. I never asked anybody for the job. I just fell into it. I was going to volunteer. And this guy who didn't want to do the lecture, didn't want to be bothered with it, just sort of threw me in the room. Said, you talk to him, And when I learned how to do it, my actual training was about 20 minutes long, at Clare Foundation back in '89. And so I think what works in all of these kinds of conversation is honesty and just a relaxed sort of, lack of pretense,
Absolutely.
And that's what I think people relate to. Yeah.
I think for me, when I first, like the podcast thing, and why I want to keep this original and with you, and we keep on doing these, is because there is a lot of fluff around it. I always bring up, and I don't want to knock on Matt. I'm sure they're a great organization. I don't know, but I just went to the Impact panel.
Yeah.
And that's not something. If that class would probably make you want to drink if you're trying to get sober. You feel so shitty about yourself after people are pointing fingers, telling you you're a horrible fucking person. It's like, whoa.
It's a posture, yeah.
You're right. So, and then when people get on TV, they try to fluff it up, or they get on the internet, they try to fluff it up and become someone they're not. It's like, dude, just be honest. So even, to me and you, this might not seem like much. We're just talking or whatever. People start listening. And they will, it's inevitable. You do enough of them, people come to us, and then we'll kind of not even narrow down. I don't want to narrow down anything, but some weeks you'll have a topic of discussion that's current, like the bird scooter guy, and then some weeks it'll kind of go off and it'll be more like personal stories and background stuff. But I mean, just for me being in that class, like the third and fourth time, it was like, oh, a newcomer's coming in, tell them the story. It's like, I feel more comfortable now listening to you. You give them the same shit you kind of give everybody. Like, oh, well, you're in the crackhead section, so you might want to, you know what I mean? You're doing your thing, but you're opening them up to like, hey, man, we're all here. This is a group of individuals that are all here for one reason. Right. No one wants to necessarily be here. No one just signed up for this class online. It was free from the college or whatever. It's like we're all in the same boat. So like, welcome and take the most away from this class that you can. Don't try to put up some facade.
Right.
You're the victim. You don't have a problem. You do have a problem. Don't milk it for what it's not. Just take away from it what you can.
Which is usually just a defense.
Right.
One of the first things I do is use profanity when somebody's new in the class to see if they'll laugh at my jokes. If I can get them to laugh, I know we're in. We got it. Because if they're laughing, then they're letting their defenses down.
Yeah.
And and a lot of times I think they'll laugh at something when they don't really want to. They didn't expect to.
Right.
So I'll say, well, fuck that. When they're in the first 10 minutes of their class.
You just kind of see them like,
and I see them wince. Yeah. I go, I didn't know that. And they used to say, well, don't use profanity. And I used to say, why not? What's the harm in punctuating your sentences. I mean, I understand why people would say that. If it was a room full of kids, it would be different. But it's a bunch of adults, and so I find it's a icebreaker, and also it makes them understand that the person talking to them is just a person too.
Who's been in the same boat.
Same boat. And so that's the idea of that class, of that section of people. And the biggest thing for me is to get them to laugh a little bit. And
that's the icebreaker.
They're laughing. They're not conjuring up a story.
And mine was like a rare. So I only think I had to do, was it 12 hours or 10 hours?
Yeah, you only did 12 hours, right.
And the normal class is how long?
Well, the normal class, my class is the same amount of time that you did.
Okay.
It's just you could accelerate it because you were a wet reckless or out of state.
Out of state, yeah.
I don't know if you did it once a week or twice a week.
I would kind of, as much as I could.
Move it around, yeah.
Yeah.
The first offenders have to do 10 classes, and the second offenders do 10 classes, but they can't accelerate it.
Oh, okay.
It has to take a certain amount of time.
Oh, that's the difference.
So first offenders are there for 3 months, and sometimes 6 months, and sometimes 9 months.
Wow.
And then the second offender is there for 18 months.
And then, so I wanted to come. I still want to come do this if I can. The second part after the break, where you do groups.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
That's just what they call peer encounter.
Okay.
Which is horseshit. It's just another way of. It's one of the fights I always have with who makes this shit up, who decides,
Yeah.
But it's a group of people where at least therapeutically, if there's such a thing in this, is that you just talk in a circle of people who had the same experience. And a good facilitator just generates that conversation with the people. So it's like the classroom, only where the instructor just stops talking and lets the people talk.
That's important.
I think it is. It's important, but if you try to make them talk about the topic you just talked about, you're dead in the water.
I can see that happening.
And that's what they always say. Well, make them discuss the topic. That's like a fucking classroom.
Yeah.
So what I do is I say, just like we're doing. So what's on your mind? How do you relate to any of this stuff? What are you thinking? I'll say, what are your thoughts? And they'll invariably say, about what? And I used to bristle at that. So I've just been talking about something for an hour and a fucking half.
Yeah.
Can you pick something out of that category?
Yeah.
But they say about what? As a knee jerk. They're not trying to insult me. I learned that it's not about
personal.
me. It's about them. They're just trying to be. You ask me what I'm thinking. Give me a category.
Yeah.
So I do.
And it's cool too, because in that, people always say there's unbiased opinions and stuff, but you don't feel that way. I don't know. Like there's a guy's like, oh, hey, do you have a story? And you're like, yeah. You asked him to say, asked him about his story. And he's like, yeah, where do you want me to start? I mean, it started in Orange County, ended in San Francisco in a stolen car. And he's like, oh, well, who arrested you? Which agency? Which time? Like, I got released, then they picked me up. But you know what I mean? But people, or if they're talking about drug use or talking about their experiences with drugs, even if it's not a whole lot, like some people, like a lot of parents will say, I never smoked weed. I never did cocaine. I never did this. It's like you lived in Miami in 1965 to 1975, and you were in a nightclub scene. You never did any of this? That's not my own personal stuff. My parents are angels, if you will. But oh, yeah, it was cool. I went home and saw my dad, and I gave him a shirt from the Alice Cooper concert. And not knowing his first concert ever was Alice Cooper. So I was like, yo, his birthday is 2 days after mine. So that's what I got him a shirt from work. But
Alice and I are friends from.
Yeah, you were telling me. But like that show was amazing, like his show and his stage presence, and he's a sober guy too.
Yep.
And it's kind of cool.
My age.
Yeah, right. And it's cool because like I feel like in those circles of people who can like really open up and talk about it, it's like we can talk about it with each other, but when it goes on to doing a podcast, it's someone that you work with that's outside of that group of open-minded people, or it goes online. There's a guy in Texas, is it right? He's getting hammered for the DUI hit and run that he's supposedly. Right? Is that what it is in Texas? The Democrat guy who's running right now?
I'm not sure.
I think he got a DUI like 20 years ago, and the GOP's bringing it up like he did a hit and run. And I'm just sitting here looking back. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, just they have never been there. It's like the
Right.
guys when you hear Jeff Sessions talk about only bad people smoke marijuana, and he's like, I've never smoked weed. Like, then can you really?
Right.
Like, I don't think weed's for everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But I just also think that you can't.
Jeff Sessions needs to smoke more weed.
Just, yes.
He really does. If anybody needs it, it's him.
It's him for sure. So it's like, I'm not saying it's for everybody. I'm not saying that everyone needs to get out there and go smoke weed, but all 24/7. But at the same time, it's like I want to be in a room where it's open to discuss ideas
Right.
and different life experiences. Just because I don't smoke weed every day, it doesn't help me out. It wouldn't help me out. Doesn't mean someone else isn't benefiting from it or whatever.
Right.
And then there's a guy who always comes in who's like, oh, I'm benefiting from weed. I can't, I can't function without weed. So what do you do when you smoke? Oh, I watch Netflix. Like, okay, so you're not productive with or without weed. Right. You're just like smoking because it makes time, whatever.
Yeah, you've got a problem with weed if you have a master's degree and you're making candles for a living.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
nothing wrong with making candles for a living.
Yeah.
But
yes, a lot of these people that are just, or they just kind of rely on weed the same way. I don't know.
I have a woman in my class, a Saturday class, that just started. She said, I will never not smoke weed. I smoke weed, and I don't have a problem with it, and I don't abuse it, but I smoke it every day, and I will never not smoke it. And I said, that's a strong statement. I said, how often? She goes, well, I wake up and I smoke a joint, and then I do my thing, and then I have another one at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I go on, and then lunchtime, right after lunch, I have a joint, and then I don't smoke until like dinner time, like around 6. So I said, okay, so for somebody who doesn't fucking abuse the drug, when are you not smoking,
Yeah.
And she kind of laughed at herself and said, I smoke all the time,
every
day.
2 hours.
Yeah. I said, you got to stop driving, that's for sure, because you'll get they'll give more and more DUIs all the time on weed.
Yeah, and now they have that.
They're kind of looking for it.
The breathalyzer for weed.
And they're looking for ways to apply it all. So it's, I'm like you, though. I don't smoke weed. I used to, but I'm sober. I don't, smoking weed is not being sober in my mind.
Right.
So, but it's like kangaroos. I'm neither for or against kangaroos. It's just,
You were saying, so I asked you before and I kind of forgot the answer. So a lot of the addicts, they go to, what can I say? People who point out, oh yeah, they're in recovery, whatever. It's like Red Bull and cigarettes is like their new thing that they're addicted to, right? The caffeine. So it's a what was your word for that? So how do you decide which addictions aren't?
Well,
how does that work with recovery?
Addiction, it's a.
I asked because one of the girls that I dated who was in recovery, she wouldn't even do like Dimetap. She wouldn't do certain drugs that were like had any sort of like something extra pushing other than like a homeopathic
like
or
a psychoactive.
Like a psychoactive, yeah. But even aspirin, she wasn't taking that.
Yeah, I think that's a little overkill, frankly.
Yeah.
But her choices aren't my call.
Of course.
I wouldn't consider somebody not sober for taking Red Bull and smoking cigarettes and taking aspirin. My thought on it is simply that we stay away from anything that is the mind that affects you and impairs you from the mind up. You could say, well, Red Bull or caffeine can impair you. Well, you have to drink a lot of Red Bull and a lot of caffeine.
Yeah.
And so I don't see those as triggers back into my addictions.
Yeah.
I don't smoke cigarettes anymore, but I smoke. I quit after I got sober.
It's probably easier to quit when you're sober too.
It's hard. Quitting cigarettes is hard, drunk, sober, or otherwise. It's a tough call.
I've done it a few times.
But you can do it, and I'm grateful beyond words that I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. But because I smoked a long time, but I understand the power of that addiction, but cigarettes, for instance, don't. It doesn't have the same kind of what's the word I usually use? The same kind of dynamic in society. Well, it does. That's not the right frame. Severity index. It doesn't have the same severity index in that people don't, drive their cars into other people because they're smoking.
Right.
They don't crash airplanes because they're smoking. They don't.
The effect isn't as like mind altering as
right.
Some
Keeping in mind that cigarettes kill more people every year than all the drug overdoses and all the drugs
right.
combined. However, you don't see the. It's an addiction, but it's an addiction that doesn't cause the same sort of severity as drinking and driving or overdosing on OxyContin or the stuff. So the index is a little bit different.
Gotcha.
Having said that, I know a lot of people who smoke, and I love them. And my sponsor died from smoking, and I love the guy. He changed my life. He really helped me turn a corner, and I would always be grateful for him. But he smoked himself to death, So
yeah, it's one of those.
It is what it is,
for sure.
But if you're sober and you're smoking cigarettes, then I would never say to somebody that you're not sober because you're smoking cigarettes.
Yeah,
people do that.
I asked, I guess,
but we don't like those people.
Yeah, it's because when you're talking about, I'm an addict of this, and is it okay to be an addict of something else? I see sometimes people that are aware they're alcoholics and then then they become addicted to maybe even AA itself. They become addicted to yoga.
Process addiction, yeah.
Oh, is that what that's called?
It's common, yeah.
Okay.
It's common because we're obsessive by nature a lot of times. And so, like getting addicted to going to the gym or getting addicted to go to the meetings, there's process addictions. There's also gambling. People get addicted to that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But, so there's substance and then there's process. Again, though, somebody who said, well, I'm just addicted to the gym, that's kind of a loose term because addiction means that the thing you're doing is causing you harm. And you know it, and you keep doing it.
Okay.
So what kind of harm does it cause going to the gym? If you're, taking steroids and
if they're overworking
going crazy,
ripping all their shit.
But if you're just going to the gym and you're working into your lifestyle and your schedule, then I don't see where it's doing you harm. Same thing with
yoga, though. Like, there's no way you can become. I mean, is yoga ever bad for you?
I don't see it.
It's just overly
going to AA meetings. People get addicted to that too, but it doesn't do harm.
No.
In the same way. They're just boorish.
And it probably makes them. I mean, AA meetings are supposed to make you feel better, right? I mean, not supposed to make you feel better, but if you're going into if you just left the house of everyone's judging you for fucking this DUI you got or judging you for something that you did in your past, then you go to a room with guys who are like, tell us what it's all about. Tell us what you're going through. I'll tell you one 10 times worse, I'm sure, you know?
Yeah, there's nothing. I don't see where that hurts you.
No.
There are people who get addicted to meetings, but again, that's a loose, using the term in a very loose way. I think.
And I think there's a ton of addicts out there that are quick to judge people that got DUIs or whatnot, but in them, I see in them like the traits of, hey, you can't stop drinking. Like, you can't. Right. You kind of forget that and say, oh, I didn't get a DUI. I didn't go to jail for this.
That's the buffer.
Right, but it's like, dude, like I see it a lot. Like, I'm looking out now at everybody. I'm like, damn, dude, like, I never really realized that you drink 5 days a week until now. Right. And it's like not just 1 beer days. It's like, no, you're drinking a 12-pack 5 days a week. Right. What? You know what I mean? And they don't necessarily know. I mean, I guess if they wanted to, I just feel like there's at the time, even with me, right, is working in nightclubs and in bars for over a decade, it was like, oh, I'm at a bar, I'm having a drink. Of course I am. It wasn't really part of reality. But then the DUI was like, looking back, dude, you're in a bar 6 nights a week. You're this, you're that. You're like, holy fuck, maybe wait, what? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's kind of a newsflash because you weren't looking at it like that because that was your lifestyle.
It's always been there. You just weren't seeing it.
Right. So I don't, when someone wants to say, oh, there's a guy back home, oh, this guy was like sharing your mugshot to everybody. I'm like, I don't care, man. That guy's a piece of shit. You know, if I'm that interesting to him, I feel sorry for him. Right. But I'm like, that guy's also out 4 days a week, driving drunk all the fucking time. It's for him to pass any sort of judgment on me.
Right. And I think that the people who do that, my theory anyway, is that stigma allows them a buffer, that they can do the same thing you did, but they haven't been caught. So in their mind, it doesn't exist. They aren't criminals.
I see.
You are, so they could stigmatize you. That gives them that sort of that distance.
And then they come running to you when they fuck up.
Oh yeah, when
for they want the advice, they want all this shit. You know, it's just crazy how that how that works.
Yeah, that's a cultural poison.
Yeah,
that we need to work on. I think.
And I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the alcohol. And I think one of the biggest problems with anything, whether it be alcoholism and drug use, whatever, is no one's talking about it. They're trying to mask this. They're trying to control it, like, for the greater good, instead of just talking about it, like, you know. And I think the psychedelics are coming back now. I don't know if they ever left, but you know, I hear a lot more about psychedelics in like the later 20s probably, and then all the kids are still doing Xanax, and you know, Xanax and lean is huge in that. In that world,
yeah.
But the psychedelics is kind of coming back, and there's guys that are like, oh well, it's all natural, whatever, and they're doing shrooms. I'm like, dude, but you're tripping a lot,
yeah.
You know, and you're on a drug that, you know, these drugs are bad because they can do this to your body. You're fucking with your mindset now,
yeah.
And if you're not fully in control of your mind and know where you're at, you can get lost. Like,
yeah.
You know,
alcohol is natural too.
Right? Yeah. No, 100%.
Heroin is natural.
So right, exactly. And then they just see it as something else. I'm like, dude, you're dropping acid all the time.
Yeah.
Like you're like this. That's not good.
Right. And I know guys that took too much acid that have never really been right. And you know, but it's always been out there. All this shit's always been around. It's just that we don't see it.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people. Yeah, I guess the natural play doesn't really work on that because it's all natural.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's just the way people accommodate. You know.
I find it amazing though that now the government, right? Weed's legal in Canada now, and it's like, oh, the America's been saying it's a meme. You've been saying this is illegal for 100 years. Now you want to become the biggest supplier of marijuana, and I'm like, well, of course they do.
The shit is hitting the fan.
It really is.
No doubt about it.
It really is, and that's kind of it's crazy to see like this push, because obviously I wasn't around for what do you call it? Prohibition, right?
Yeah.
But it feels that way, and everyone's standing up behind it. And the whole thing is, well, these people are bad. They're going to commit crimes. No, they're not, man.
Right.
You clearly haven't been in a room with people smoking pot before.
Right.
You know?
You never see two guys fighting over a chicken at a Grateful Dead concert.
No.
You never see that.
No.
Two cowboys smoking weed.
They're like, hey, man, do you want something? Like, how much? It's free, man. It's all out of love.
Right.
The Grateful Dead got something going on. I went to that show at Dodger Stadium, and just seeing that crowd, I'm like, holy fuck, this is just wild.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a bunch of guys, you know, they're all successful dudes running around with their shirts off and wearing their Birkenstocks. So like, what the fuck?
That's right.
I got to teach tomorrow. What?
Yeah, right.
What, dude? That's a funny crowd. But yeah, you don't see that with alcohol. I think that it brings out the worst, and it has the ability to bring out a lot of the bad traits in people.
Yeah, it's much more violent as a drug.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, well, I gotta use the bathroom.
Yeah, man.
If that's a possibility.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep it in the podcast.
I'll keep it in. Yeah, go ahead. It's right over there.
I don't want to go.
It's still rolling, but whatever. I can edit it later. That's something else.
Were you going to use your phone as your camera?
That's what I'm using right now.
Oh, did you film it as well?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it was on film.
Oh yeah. We're actually live on YouTube right now.
Oh, really?
Surprise. Yeah, no one's watching, but here we are.
Interesting.
It's us live.
No kidding.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah. I was working a lot with. I was using the distractions of getting cameras and microphones and all this stuff. I'm like, let's just keep it basic and focus on creating the content and then adding the different angles and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But when too much of that goes in, I feel like I'm stepping away from the conversation. Am I trying to control a Kenmore angle or something like that? You know? So I don't want to take away from like what's coming out, because even the discussions, everything you say, like I'm not trying to boost your head or anything like that, but like it's just good. I was telling my mom, I'm like, she's like, so how's it, the DUI school instructor? Or you want to let's get into this. Oh, so my probation officer, I got my first drug test too. So I sent my mom the results from the drug test. I'm like, look, Mom, I passed the test. First time in like 10 years.
So proud of my boy.
She joined in with like on the laugh with it. You know what I mean? Which was really cool. And obviously the probation officer was happy. But I was talking to the guy, like the doctor. I wasn't a doctor, but the guy who takes the test. It was like an observed one. So I go to the bathroom. You probably know this, the drug test. It's right down the street over here.
The technician?
Yeah, it's like a guy, and it's A&G something. He's been doing it for years.
The urine analysis.
Right.
Yeah.
So I go in there, and he's like, he has to watch me or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. But I'm like, where are you watching from? And he turns the light on. This is mirrors all around my dick. So I had like about 10 of my cock just all around. I'm like, this is kind of awkward. And then I kind of got stage fright.
I need a cocktail for this.
Yes, exactly. Well, what's happening here? But it was kind of awkward. And then he starts talking about, I had to test 30 guys today for some building project and do, it's like, so stage fright's not a big deal. I'm like, I don't know. And then I did my thing, put it in the cup. But it was just really funny to like send that to my mom. Like, hey, Mom, look, I passed the test. But what was I going to say about...
Your mom asked you about the DUI instructor.
Oh yeah, she's like, hey, how's it going? You still meet with Dennis? And I said, yeah. I mean, we try to meet at least a couple times a month. And I think this is our fourth one now, or I believe a third or fourth, something like that. Yeah. Third, this is a third, yeah. But she was asking about it, and I'm like, it's just cool to know a musician who is in the bar circuit, who's in the club circuit, doing his thing, who also has other things going on. But it's just nice to have someone who is twice my age, and I'm not calling you old. You're a young spirit, but she's like, oh, you have like my stepdad now. He's or my father. I'm like, it's just different to be able to speak with someone openly about anything. Yeah, it's not going to change that judgment. Like, there's certain things I can't tell my mom. She knows. She probably assumes some certain things. Whether it be. And I told my mom 3 years ago, finally, I'm like, yeah, I've smoked weed. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've done it. I still occasionally do. I find it helps with my migraines, and it helps me fall asleep without Ambien or Xanax or something like that. Oh, well, I don't know. I've just been always taught it was very bad whenever. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But she wasn't like judging me for it. But there's certain things like you can't like, hey, Mom, I got lost for 3 days at a festival on acid. And she's like, acid?
20 years ago.
Like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mom's worry in hindsight.
Right, of course. So I was just telling her that, that we meet. And then my PO, he actually called me, and he was like, I need to get off the I need to see if I can get this from someone over there. It was basically like a post-course analysis to make for something. Yeah.
We'll get that for you.
Yeah. I need to get that. And it was talking what's his name. But even he was like, wait, so you still teach? I'm like, I'm basically still in the class, except now there's no one else. I get one-on-one. He's like, well, you starting a podcast with the instructor? I'm like, yeah, man. He's like, huh. And even he was kind of like, well, after this whole thing's said and done, maybe I would like to get another thing on it, like another point of view. And I was just like, everyone kind of coming around like, okay, well, that's cool. So you have the DUI class instructor who's had DUIs himself. Now let's kind of get like the PO's take on this. Maybe get an attorney's take.
Great.
I'm like, that would be really interesting to do, to have an open discussion with everybody. Even an attorney who does technically push this .08 thing, even whether it's true or not.
I got the perfect guy.
Yeah,
Lou Shapiro.
You were saying you had a guy,
But perfect guy for it, because he doesn't push the '08 thing, but he knows how I feel about it, and he still makes reference to it when he needs to. But from a very clear and not agenda-driven point of view.
Right.
It's all about a law point of view.
Okay.
And he'd be perfect for this. I got to get
Awesome.
him to come in and do it.
For sure.
He's a good guy. He's a busy guy, but he used to be in the public defender's office.
Okay.
So he comes in and does the class once in a while.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And he always has a good message. And we have gotten to be friends over the years. So here's a nice Jewish boy coming in and do his straight up, very professional lecture on the legal aspects. But who I warm up the group. And so before he gets on, he has to listen to my fucking jokes. And he has learned, we have gotten to be friends, and when he laughs, he doesn't use the same language I do, but he laughs at the language I use.
Right.
Which makes me a big fan of his.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, so we live in a world that we can connect in. We can all be who we are.
100%.
And bring truth and value and the stuff that's important to the message. But if you're driven by a point of view or an agenda that says that you know more than I do, or that I know more than you do, then you're lost. You're lost before you get started.
Yeah, 100%. And people and the openness or the not willing to open up about it. It's really unfortunate because there are great stories out there. Like I know we want to get the doctor on who lost everything. I mean, but these people, it's like, I'm not saying it would have changed your perspective of it, but it shouldn't be even. It's like we get through the shame phase, and it's like I'll tell one person, I'll tell two people, then I'll talk to it openly. There's still certain people I don't want to know until I'm all the way through it. I'm off the probation, I'm off everything,
Because you got to ask yourself why.
I mean, for me, so my biggest one, hopefully no one's watching this. If they are, it's a good time to come out on it. But yeah, at work. So at work, now it's something, if this happened now, I wouldn't hide it from my employers, right?
Right.
But then it was my 6th week with this company, and then I get a fucking DUI while visiting family in Florida, and then I come back and they're like, well, how's the car thing? So I've been skating it, I've been Ubering it, I've been doing what I needed to do to make it work. Right. And now I feel like if it came out before, like, hey, I want to tell you this stuff, because now I feel like you see my work ethic, you know how hard I work in this. I didn't let this stop me as far as getting to work and living in Moore Park. I didn't let it stop me, because I would, as an employer, in the past, I would have been like, DUI, you live an hour and a half away. I can't rely on you to get to work on time. So there's things that I would worry about in that way.
Right. I was just thinking that we don't want to be vulnerable.
Right.
In this thing. So we want to disclose all the information when we got it all, our shit together.
Yeah, for sure.
We're all cleaned up and shined up.
But are you ever really cleaned up or shined up? Never.
But the reason you can't disclose that to your employers is because you're afraid they'll fire you.
Right.
And so they set the barrier up themselves that way.
Yeah.
And you're just doing the smart thing. I think it's wise. It's prudent to not give too much information at a certain point. But the fact that I'll let you know all about me when I'm all shined up and perfect, it's not going to happen.
And I don't necessarily, I don't want to be all shined up. I just want to be.
Don't worry.
Like, ever. But I think that next month is going to be, I get my license back November 21st. I'm going to fly home for Thanksgiving. It's going to be great. I don't know. The state of Florida is going to fuck me somehow, though.
Oh, yeah.
When I was just past there this last trip, they had that big hurricane up in Tallahassee. So, of course, I'm trying to get answered. Okay, I'm 30 days out from getting my license back. I want to know what the requirements of DMV are going to ask of me. It's the FR44 insurance, which is similar to SR22.
Yeah, right.
So it's like 100 and 300 are the personal and whatever. So it's going to cost me $3,000 for 6 months up front, no monthly payments. So I'm coming with that money.
Wow.
Obviously, there's some reinstatement fee, I'm sure, is going to come up in there. So anyways, I was trying to get these questions asked of what I need to handle while I was in Florida, because no one answers the phone. And then this hurricane was going on, so the offices were shut in Tallahassee, and no one was telling me anything. So we're kind of winging it. But I'm assuming it's going to cost me about $5,000 with insurance to get my license back.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well, because it had because my license was revoked due to this is like my 5th time. It was driving on a suspended license.
Oh yeah, okay.
It was my 5th one in 10 years. But this is also without knowledge, because I would get like Florida Fish and Wildlife would give me a ticket for this, and then I wouldn't need to pay that ticket to get my license back. When I went to the DMV, they didn't see that, which then comes back around. And parking tickets from living in 3 different counties. And there was a time, and they were all like my fault, but they were like, oh, I don't give a fuck about change of address or doing this. I'll do it when I figure it out. But now it's like every time I move, I'm changing my address so I can get that mail, because a parking ticket from 5 years ago can suspend your license now in Florida. So it's like we need to stay on top of this shit. So anyways, just the process of getting on the books, getting on paper, figuring out what I need to do to get my license back, and then how much this shit costs. It's like I want to tell people, and I see them. Like my neighbor the other day came home, and he was like pulled an e-brake in his mom's Lexus. He lives right here. I'm like, dude. I didn't go over there that night, but I saw him the next day doing laundry. This is yesterday. I saw him. I go, hey, man, take it from someone who knows. I'm on probation from a DUI right now. I'm not judging you. Like, and I don't want to judge you. Like, I'm your neighbor. I'm outside, whatever. But I'm like, don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're 22. I'm assuming that's your parents' Lexus that's parked right there. Like, don't. Like, just don't.
Yeah.
I go, just try not,
well, they pull them over, they can tow the Lexus.
Right. And not only that, I'm like, and this kid, I don't know, but in my head, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, he's got parents that are in like Korea or something, or they're funding this. He fucks up once, he's getting shipped back, his life's over.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just thinking crazy in my head. But I'm like, I'm not going to, I didn't call the cops on you because you went home. You pulled the e-brake. You were home. Like the car's parked. You didn't get back in it. But I'm like, yo, you fucked up. You were blasting, you know what I mean? Rap music in Santa Monica while pulling e-brakes around corners. Like not a good idea. For
right.
It's going to be very expensive.
Right.
So, and I don't want to, at the other point, like I want my story to get out there, but I don't want to feel like I'm fucking pointing fingers at anybody.
Right.
Just like, no, dude, I've been there. Trust me. I was on the hood of a car going 90 miles an hour, hanging on drunk as fuck one day. And my buddy was driving. Like I've been there. I've done stupid shit drunk. Not only driving, but just being involved, just doing dumb stuff. So I'm not judging at all, but I'm like, I never got caught those times. Hopefully you never get caught and you stop doing this dumb shit.
Right.
But as the crazy guy, whether it be in nightlife, in college, in wherever I was always, it's kind of standing out for something.
Yeah.
Just being a ginger, I don't know. But I don't want to come off like I'm preaching, and most people probably don't want to come off like they're preaching.
Well, that's the risk. Because other people, it's hard for other people to learn from your mistakes.
Right.
They learn from their own.
Of course.
So there's a component of it that we don't want to preach. We don't want to come off like that guy. But I think if you can show your vulnerability and your soft underbelly to people, they'll trust you more. And maybe the guy that you talk to will respond, and maybe he needs to get his ass kicked before he responds.
Yeah.
You never really know, but you don't
cop.
hurt him by trying to.
Yeah, that's true.
Share the message.
I'm not hurting it.
Right.
And that's the thing too, is that like I always bring up Joe Rogan because like his podcast is awesome. But he has guys on there that talk about drugs openly, talking about alcohol use openly, and it's like most people aren't doing that, and I feel like it needs to be a discussion.
Yeah,
because it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Like it's not going anywhere.
You also need people that are drinking and using to be on the podcast and talking.
100%.
It can't be all one bubble.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like no, we want to.
That's my fear.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to be that guy that comes off like the sober agenda guy.
Right. And that's the thing too, is like these kids, like someone, I met a 20-year-old, he's a friend of my DJ buddy of mine. He's like, oh, you don't drink anymore? I heard you were like the party guy, like that was you. I'm like, yeah, bro, like what happened? Like I was too good at it. I was too good at being that person,
right.
And it wasn't anything that got me in trouble in the past, other than this past year, Not to say that I wasn't doing anything that could have got me in trouble, it's just that I wasn't getting caught doing it.
Right.
And it's like, there's guys out there that I know that are doing tons of blow. They're doing tons of cocaine, and no one wants to talk about it, or like, hey, I used to use. But it's guys like the Joe Rogans and him telling him stories, and the guys you hear that got sober. Even Steven Tyler, right? Steven Tyler, Vince Neil for a while. If you hear their fuck ups on coke and guys around them that were doing blow, like in the moment you're not seeing those things, you're having a good time. But if you say, okay, these are guys I look up to musically, these are guys if they weren't talking about it, then you wouldn't have like
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because a lot of times the music that the reason why they're when they become musicians, for instance, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, just for an example, they have a whole album. The first or second album was about heroin, right? And it was like, oh wow, so we like these musicians because they're talking about heroin. We might get involved, not myself, but we might get involved in something that they're kind of preaching that lifestyle. But then they live through it. Now they're talking about the the toxicness of it. Then it's like, oh, okay. Does that make any sense at all?
Most of the guys that, like my age in music, I think music is a great equalizer and it's a great connecting point. But most of the guys I know that have been around for a while are sober or have really changed their lifestyle in order to survive.
Right.
So it's not uncommon, I think, to see guys get sober and then realize that their gifts are still their gifts. They can still play, they can still connect, they can still be relevant and be sober at the same time. I think you run into trouble when you make your sobriety the key, the whole thing. Like you make it like your platform. But I mean, I think being sober and talking about it is great. I don't pimp sobriety to anybody.
No, of course not.
But it's important to talk about it, I think.
And it's like you said, like when Steve-O from Jackass, you follow him at all?
I saw him around years ago.
Okay. So he's like, I just never, most people think that, even myself, when I was like, maybe I just want to stop drinking for a little bit, and then I'd go out, and then people would be like, oh, you're not drinking? That's fucking weird. It's like, I mean, why is it weird? Like, I just don't want to drink today. A lot of peer pressure there.
Comes up all the time.
All the time. And
it's the only thing that you have to explain. The only drug that you have to explain to people why you're not taking it.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
Yeah.
I never even realized that until you just said it. But that's true. No one's like, why aren't you smoking weed, bro? We're at a reggae festival.
Yeah, it's the only drug that you have to explain why you're not using it.
Yeah, and then people want to throw, oh yeah, are you a friend of fucking Bill's? Are you this? I'm like, well, no, but if I was, like, what the fuck's it to you?
Yeah, well, I cheapen it like that.
You're trying to throw out these terminologies that only people know about. Like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, and that's hollow.
Yeah. But I felt this guy's like, oh yeah, it's cool if you're in the program, bro. I'm like, I'm not fucking for or against or anything. I'm just doing sobriety. I'm just doing it.
So kangaroos.
Yeah.
I'm not for or against kangaroos.
Right.
I'm against slapping kangaroos.
Right.
Because I think that's fucked up.
Right.
It's not a good idea. And if the kangaroo gets pissed off, and has had enough, he'll let you know.
Yeah.
He'll let you know.
But yeah, exactly. So it's not one of those things I'm for or against. It's just like, dude, like, what are you trying to pry out of me? I don't drink. Like, are you telling me there has to be a story behind why I don't drink?
Right.
Why do you drink?
So the person that's asking you that many questions has got questions of his or her own.
Right.
One of my favorite stories, and we're kind of running out of time, but one of my favorite stories is a girl who was giving me shit about not drinking. And she was the girlfriend of my friend, a keyboard player. It was my good friend. But, hadn't seen him a long time. We played years and years ago, and I went and saw him in Scottsdale just to catch up with him. And his girlfriend was this hot, blonde chick with great cleavage. I mean, world-class, Elizabeth Taylor cleavage.
Okay.
And she was hot and kind of being, frisky with me, and couldn't understand why I didn't drink. And she kept asking me, you don't drink at all? And by that time, I was about 5 years sober or something like that. And I was, tired of answering the question, but I didn't want to be rude to her. She goes, I just don't see how you can have any fun if you don't drink. I just don't get it. I mean, she dismissed me in a way, and I got a little frustrated by it. But then the gig was over. My friend said, why don't you follow me, and we'll go to my place, and we'll catch up when we can be in the quiet. So I didn't realize how much she was drinking, but she was shit-faced. I didn't realize it at the time. So cleavage and all, she gets in the car, he gets his gear in the car, and I follow him. And about a block down the road, I see the cleavage come out of the car window, along with her hair, which is in a little bun. And the bun was flopping in the wind, and and the cleavage was just hanging out the window. And as they turned right, and I was following them, she was throwing up all over the side of that car. I mean, I had never seen that much throw up come out of anybody.
And it's not attractive.
It was not even with the cleavage.
Yeah.
It just didn't. It took it damaged it. So when I got to his place, the side of the car was painted with her vomit, and it was a moment that I went, "Oh, okay, I get it." You know, it just reinforced my the reasons. One of the many reasons why drinking doesn't work for me, but it also reinforced that I don't have to answer to anybody for it. The only reason that I was compromised is because of those tits that were staring me right in the face. That's the only thing that made me want to have to negotiate it.
Yeah.
And you gotta recognize that stuff.
For sure.
You know, it wasn't because she was an attractive woman who I later slept with, I might add. And it was a really hollow experience. Just to show, just to prove my point.
Fuck
you know what I mean?
man.
You got to do what you got to do, right?
I'm with you.
But when I said to my friend, I said, "Oh man, let's catch up another day because this is not a good time for you. I can see." And he went, "What?" And I said, "Well, you know, the car, the vomit." He goes, "Oh, this happens all the time. No sweat." I said, "Nevertheless, I'm gonna pass, take a rain trip."
Yeah.
And that was the last time I saw my buddy.
No shit.
Yeah, I hadn't seen him since.
That's funny, but people, they don't. But to her, like she's not, and to you, it's a reminder. Like that's why I don't fucking drink.
She was using her currency, which was her cleavage, and her looks, and her beautiful blonde bun. She was using that as currency.
Yeah. How do you not have any fun?
Equalize, to put me on my heels.
What's another thing too? I wonder why like most drinkers always say like, how do you have fun? People always bring up fun and alcohol. And it is fun, don't get me wrong, but there's always, there's not many nights or with the fun, it's 50-50 probably. You wake up and there's some resentment, there's like some oh shit, there's some what did I do? Who the fuck drove home? Did I drive home? Regrets. And it's like, it's easier to not do it again when all those feelings are coming to you while sitting next to a fucking aluminum toilet and you're like, oh shit, I'm in jail.
Right.
I'm in fucking jail. And then it doesn't matter what you had planned that day, that week. You didn't pay rent. You got things to do. You're there. Right. You're not getting out. There's no time to prep for it. You're just there. You thought you were going out to get laid. And the only thing that happened is you end up in jail. Right. And now it's like, I don't care what you have to do. You broke the law. It
changes the definition of fun over time.
Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, then you have this epiphany of like, oh, well, not even an epiphany, but why does it take something negative like that to just stop doing it? And it is because the people who are just like, why aren't you drinking? Like, you can't, they always want an answer.
Right. Especially when they're not sure themselves.
Of course. Yeah. But just because I don't, like, that's not an answer to people.
Right.
Like, I know when people are like, oh, I'm a vegan, so you don't eat any meat? I'm like, shut the that sounds dumb, right? Like, so you don't eat chicken? No, that's fucking animal. Like, you don't eat no. You don't drink alcohol?
Nothing with a face.
Just don't do it.
Yeah.
What do you mean sober? Like, you don't smoke weed? Sober. I'm sober. That's what I mean by sober.
Well, that's because people have a hard time getting their head around it.
Yeah, but I don't understand how they got so wrapped up into everything needs to be fucking about alcohol, too.
I think it's just kind of insecurity, their own insecurity about it, and what we've as a society, that what we've accepted as what's normal, what's valuable.
Yeah.
Fun is the value in fun. I think changes over as you get older, but the idea of here's what I do, here's how I access fun, and then for you not to participate in this fun makes me doubt myself. So I'm going to ask you all these questions.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And I'm going to ask you questions with an attitude.
And another thing I noticed too is people in AA, they get a conversation starts like, hey, how long have you been sober for? And someone has had a couple of drinks. They're asking the guy in AA, like, hey, they're intrigued. Like, I might want to join AA. Can I get in with this crew that doesn't drink? And the guy in AA is just like, dude, fuck off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, or people who we were outside of a kava bar, and this girl like, oh, hey, we can get fucked up on kava and kratom. They're two legal highs in Florida. And I'm like, no. She's like, why not? I'm like, look at people in this line. I'm not judging them. for being in AA in the program or being court-ordered sobriety, whatever it is. I'm just saying these people can't drink alcohol, so they go to the kava and the kratom. It's people like you that start abusing these legal highs now that ruin like what kratom and kava were around for in the first place. Like, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I just know that from what I've read, like the kratom industry has gotten a lot of people off the fucking pills and it's made the dope sickness not as bad and whatnot.
I'm not really familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm not, but I'm telling her, I'm like, you're just looking at it as a way to get fucked up. These guys are looking at it as a way to get fucked up on something that isn't alcohol, and that just kind of makes them go to sleep and no one's really overdosing off of. But it's, I don't know, just
Out is out.
out is out.
Yeah.
You know, and they're
My addiction is to out.
yeah. And people, they're sitting there like, yeah, man, we do this and we can't drink alcohol. It's like, and that's another thing too. If you see the guys who are like, they go to rehab, right? Or on the TV show where they get sent to, is it intervention?
Intervention, yeah.
The guys who really want to go, that really hit rock bottom, they're like, fuck, man, this isn't working for me. I need to sober up. They just go and they get sober and they do it for themselves. Then there's guys that are kind of like, they just want that comfort feeling of, okay, here's my whole family sitting here telling me to get sober. They're going to leave me. And it's like, they don't really want to get sober because they're asking for help when they're fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, we all want to feel good. We all want a little attention. We all want, especially when you're drunk, it escalates that.
Right.
You know? But it's like, I always see the guys get duped into doing that. I'm like, that guy's not going to fucking last. He's fucking high as a kite going into, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
it's an uncomfortable place to be.
right.
Yeah.
I would imagine. But anyways, what time do you got to run out?
I got to get moving.
You got to get moving? All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll close it at that. If you watch this on YouTube later. Dennis, do you have a last name we could give these people or no?
Kenmore.
Kenmore. Dennis Kenmore here. Yeah, we're still going to figure this whole thing out, but thanks for listening and watching. Thanks for your time, Dennis.
Oh, man, I love it.
We'll check
Glad
you
to be
next
here.
time.
So it's the YouTube is on Opie.
So I'm going to put this one up. Yeah. So this one's going to be...
So that today's unedited.
Yeah, the one on there is not edited on YouTube.